Hi, it's Dwyer. It's January the 22nd, 2025. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me just say, in boxing, we talk about legacy. Right? Fighters always want to prove themselves. You have fighters who always feel that need to fight, who always have a challenge. There's always some young guy who the public is buzzing about. In Canelo's case, it's David Benavidez. Right? And the public wants the old warrior who has already proven themselves to the point where it's obvious to fans that the old warrior is a first ballot Hall of Famer. But that's not enough. The fans want that old warrior to take on the unbeaten young guy. Right? Let's talk about legacy. Let's talk about boxing. Let's talk about drive. Right? In the NFL, in football, Jerry Rice was obviously a Hall of Famer. He owned many of the wide receiver records in the National Football League. There was no question that Rice was going to get in the Hall of Fame. But as Rice told an interviewer, the fire still burned. The Hall of Fame just wasn't enough. Right? Jerry Rice kept playing until he got cut by Mike Shanahan and the Denver Broncos, I believe. Right? Just understand, Michael Jordan, a double three-peat. Right? He wins 3 titles in a row. He leaves the sport. When his father dies, comes back to the sport, wins another 3 titles. Right? Has several scoring championships. No one has matched him since he left the game. Has several all-defensive teams. He's clearly a Hall of Famer. For some reason, he felt a need to come back a second time to play for the Washington Wizards. Many of these athletes need their sports. Right? They just need the identity that comes with being part of their sport. But let's talk about the athlete who is in it for the recognition, who has a choice. Many of these guys don't. Right? But let's talk about the athletes who have a choice and who want to maximize their legacy. I know it sounds completely ridiculous. Right? Completely ridiculous. It's hard to fathom now. But when Roy Jones jumped up to the heavyweight division to fight John Ruiz, a guy who gave Evander Holyfield all he could handle, and when Roy beat Ruiz and became the heavyweight champion, I'm just telling folks that if he had walked away from the sport at that moment, he would have been viewed as a Ray Robinson figure. Not that Ray Robinson left at the right time. But understand, we would think more highly of Jones. You wouldn't have the Antonio Tarver knockout, the Glenn Johnson knockout, the Dennis Lebedev knockout, the loss to Joe Calzaghe. You wouldn't have any of that. You would have just had a guy rise to the heavyweight championship after winning titles in multiple divisions. Right? After beating Hall of Famers like James Toney, Mike McCallum, Virgil Hill. Right? Then he would have jumped up. He would have won the heavyweight championship. Then he could have left the sport, come back, been the announcer that he is, been the promoter that he is, been the trainer that he is, and he'd have that extra glow. Wouldn't he? Let me say this too. You're a light heavyweight champion. You jump multiple weight classes to get to heavyweight, right? You skip over cruiser. You win the heavyweight championship. For a lot of people, that would have been an obvious exit point from the sport. Jones decided to lose weight to get back down to light heavyweight. Right? Let's just say Jones wasn't at his best after that. The weight loss hurt him, in my opinion, the rest of his career. Let's switch it up. Let's look at a more current fighter. Let's look at Tyson Fury. Now, it's my belief that when a fighter beats another great fighter, that fighter, the winner, has their legacy improve as that other great fighter goes on to do great things. Now, Tyson Fury has announced his retirement from the sport. This is boxing. I'm not sure if I believe him. Right? Because let's face it, in boxing, guys retire only to return 12 to 18 months later. Right? But if in fact he's truly retired, didn't he stay at the dance one fight too many? Wouldn't you, the boxing fan, think more highly of him had he retired after the first Usyk fight? Right, understand that first Usyk fight, that's dodgy. Right, there's a sizable group out there who believe Tyson Fury won that fight. Right, we were waiting for the third judge's scorecard to be read to figure out who won that fight. And the third judge's scorecard had it by a 1-point difference. Right, that first fight's a jump ball, really. Now, had Tyson Fury unbeaten going into that first fight, had he said, hey, that's it for me. I had a good run. I'm no longer unbeaten. I fought Usyk, who I thought was a big challenge. He won the fight. Now I'm moving on. Right? Had he done that, if he walked into a bar and they said Tyson Fury, a lot of people are going to say, man, he only lost once, and that's debatable. That was a close fight. Right? Understand, Fury had money in the bank. Don't get me wrong. He's a lot wealthier now because of the rematch. But legacy has a cost, doesn't it? Right? Sooner or later, even great fighters have to say no mas, even though the next fight's a big payday. Right? And so just understand, an argument can be made the most expensive money Fury ever made in his life was the money he made on the Usyk rematch. Now we forget the glow of the first fight, don't we? Right now it's clear, whatever the scorecards were in the first fight, Usyk won the series. That's how it's remembered. Right, legacy-wise, what's the good that Tyson Fury got from the Usyk rematch? You tell me. Now Fury, and I doubt this, but he may have wanted to retire before the Usyk rematch. Right? Let's say he thought to himself, you know what? I feel I won the first fight. I feel this guy got sympathy because his country was invaded. I just want one more fight. I'm Henry Maskey, right? Look him up. I just want one more fight because I need to retire as champion. Maybe that was the thought process. Was his risk-reward analysis correct? I would argue no. I would argue that if you have that Marvin Hagler, Ray Leonard last fight, think about Hagler, and you know that 40% of the people out there, at least 40%, think you won the fight. Right? When you walk away, you have that extra glow. right? You'd see Hagler at events. You know, there'd be a boxing match. They'd show the crowd. Hagler would be in the crowd. This is after disappearing to Italy for years. And you would always think, man, this guy was a great champion. And then, of course, that Ray Leonard fight, that's razor close. Right? There's no second fight where Marvin Hagler loses by 3 rounds. So I want people to think about the stature that Tyson Fury lost in that Usyk rematch. Don't get me wrong, Tyson Fury's still a Hall of Famer. Right? But that last fight matters. And in that last fight, he lost it by a margin. Understand what could have happened. He loses the first fight by a photo finish. Right? Many people think he won it. As Usyk would go on in his career, let's say Usyk wins a Daniel Dubois rematch. Let's say Usyk then beats some other guys. Right? Let's say Moses Atama fights Usyk, Usyk beats him. Let's say Lawrence Okoli fights Usyk, Usyk beats him. Let's say Martin Bakole and Usyk actually have a public pro fight and Usyk beats him. We would be comparing the margins of Usyk victories to the margin of his victory over Fury. As I said, that first fight was a photo finish. So if Usyk runs roughshod or continues to run roughshod over the heavyweight division, and if he's beating guys by 3-4 rounds, right, the guys who end up going the distance, right, because some guys, Tony Bellew didn't, right, Daniel Dubois didn't make it the distance, right, if Usyk cleans out the heavyweight division, that would shine a light that much more brightly, believe it or not, on Tyson Fury. Because we would say, wow, Usyk beat Zhilei Zhang by 3 rounds. The Tyson Fury fight was a split decision. Right? Fury came close to beating Usyk. So when Fury comes up for the Hall of Fame, we would say, man, not only did Fury have an unbeaten run, a great series of fights against Deontay Wilder, right? Victory over Vladimir Klitschko, a multi-year heavyweight champion. But we would say when he fought the great Alexander Usyk, that was Usyk's closest fight. Right? I know the Maris Breedis crowd is dying to be heard. I respect that. Right? But just understand, we're here talking about legacy. Try to quantify the amount of legacy that a Hagler would have lost if Ray Leonard comes out and beats him by 3 rounds in a rematch. That's what Tyson Fury just lost. So let's talk about some other fighters. I've said it here before. I personally thought Bivol, who I picked to beat Beterbiev, won the fight. The judges disagreed. The judges are the official arbiters. Right? Bivol officially lost that fight. Understand, Bivol is still the first man. He'll always be the first man to go the distance with Arthur Beterbiev. He'll always have that designation. If Bivol walks in a bar 5 years from now, many people are going to say, hey, that fight should have been scored for Bivol. Right? At one point in that fight, according to reports, Beterbiev's own corner told him, you need a stoppage. Well, Bivol, of course, has that Jerry Rice fire, doesn't he? The question posed in this video is, should he acknowledge it? If his goal is to walk away from the sport on top, hasn't he already made the showing, whatever the official decision was, in that first Beterbiev fight? Anywhere he goes, people are going to say, man, that Beterbiev fight was a classic. Right? Anywhere he goes. Instead, he signed to fight Beterbiev a second time. Now his bank account's going to be taken care of, but it's taken care of already. Didn't he already fight, name the cash cow fighter, Jean Pascal, Canelo, Beterbiev, Gilberto Ramirez? Hasn't Bivol already had some fights that one would think landed a lot of money in his bank account? But it's not enough, right? He didn't become a professional prize fighter to walk away from the sport with a loss. I know that's what guys think in the moment, right? It's even worse than that. I'm sure he's looked at films of the fight and his family knows to turn it off before you get to the later rounds because they know daddy's getting upset. He thinks he won that fight. Right? I get it. He's taking the rematch. How much more, if he wins a narrow decision, how much more will Bivol's profile increase? My argument is not by much. Right? My argument is simply, look, we already are giving him the benefit of the doubt because of a great first fight against Beterbiev. So let's talk about some other people. Because understand, we're in an era where guys who already have distinguished themselves are continuing to fight. Terence Crawford. Crawford wants Canelo. Right now, I was talking with someone the other day. We were talking about Crawford at 168. The feeling is, hey, Crawford doesn't want to fight the guys at 160. He doesn't want to fight the other guys at 168. They might be too dangerous. He wants to fight the guy at 168 who's his size. Right? Compare and contrast the heights of Terence Crawford with, let's say, Diego Pacheco. Folks, it's not close. So understand, Crawford is targeting the 168-pounder he thinks he can beat. Right? Let me ask a really dumb question here. What's the point in that? Right? In other words, okay, Canelo is an all-time great. Canelo's one of the best in the sport pound for pound. But if you're uncertain as to whether you could actually beat the other ranked guys at 168, then even if you beat Canelo, are you the best at 168? If I'm sticking around for that extra fight, if it's not for supremacy, then what's it for? Right? Let me just say, if I'm Crawford, and I know everyone disagrees with me, and I know Crawford is going to fight Canelo September in Vegas. It's kind of like an open secret. But if I'm Crawford, I really have to ask myself, what am I doing? I'm unbeaten right now. That's what I'm risking whenever I step in the ring. I'm a first ballot Hall of Famer right now. Right? I'm going to go up to 168. I'm going to fight Canelo. Number one, there's a chance I could get blown out. Number two, there's a chance that at 37, I'm no longer Terence Crawford. Right? Yes, there's big money there. Crawford made big money when he fought Errol Spence. Right? You go to your bank, you withdraw some money, you want to feel good about it. You don't want to think to yourself, man, that's the extra fight I demanded that I lost by 3 rounds. Let's talk about a couple other guys who really we want to give pause to and hope they think things through. Back in the day, Ali lost to a fighter in his 7th pro fight, Leon Spinks. Right? 7th or 8th pro fight. Then Ali had a rematch against Spinks. Believe it or not, it was one of the most watched sports events of the decade. Right? He fought Spinks in a rematch, won the fight. It was clear that Ali was no longer Ali. By that I mean the Ali of the 60s would have dusted him off. The Ali of the first half of the 1970s would have dusted off that version of Ali. But it wasn't enough. In Ali's mind, Larry Holmes was his sparring partner. Right? Forget the fact that Holmes is one of the dominant heavyweights in history in my eyes. Right? At one point, he was Ali's sparring partner. Ali made the mistake of fighting him. Right? Ali fought Trevor Burbeck. Let's just say that Ali kept fighting after the Leon Spinks redemption rematch. Had he left after that Leon Spinks redemption fight, he would have suffered a lot less damage. We wouldn't have Angelo Dundee telling the referee it's over at the end of the Larry Holmes fight. We wouldn't have footage of Larry Holmes looking at the referee, hoping that the referee stops his demolition of his idol. So today, let's talk about a guy I know is going to be controversial, Ryan Garcia. Right? He beat Devin Haney. Knocked Devin Haney down multiple times in that fight. Now, the best thing that could happen to Ryan Garcia without the risk would be for Devin Haney to go on to have a dominant career. Right? Let's say Devin Haney, in a dangerous fight, wins his next fight against Jose Ramirez. That's a dangerous fight, folks. Let's say Devin Haney jumps up. I'm just keeping it real here. Jaron Ennis hasn't looked that impressive his last couple of fights. Let's say Devin Haney eventually beats Jaron Ennis. Let's say on the way there he beats Mario Barrios, who didn't look great his last fight. Right, let's say Devin Haney annexes the titles at 147. Somewhere in there, he fights the guy who has new advisors, Teofimo Lopez. The best thing that could happen to Ryan Garcia would be for Devin Haney to go forward and have a lot of success. Ryan Garcia, according to reports, has a lot of money in the bank. Right? You would think that if Ryan Garcia just took $2 million of the dollars he has in the bank and puts them in Bitcoin, he'd be set for life. Right? He doesn't have to get hit in the head. Well, that's not enough. Ryan Garcia is coming back. Right? Ryan Garcia, let's just say, Rolly Romero, whatever you think about him. Right? That fight against Gervonta Davis hung in the balance, didn't it? Don't let the knockout in that fight cause amnesia. Understand, Gervonta Davis, who has that mischievous grin on his face, who looks confident in interviews, wasn't confident in the ring. Look at the low punch volume on that fight. Ryan Garcia, to maintain his rep, can't fight scrubs. He has to fight credible fighters. So, according to reports, he's going to fight Rolly Romero. Then he's going to move up to Devin Haney. Why would he want to fight Haney again? Right? Even though there's Osterin in his system when he fights Haney the first time, he beat Haney. Right? What's he going to prove to us now? That he could beat Haney sober? Right? What exactly is his end goal? Is being a celebrity not enough? Is having made enough money, having made what's called walkaway money, not enough, right? Ryan Garcia is not going to starve. Understand, boxing has a lot of positions for people who aren't fighters. You don't think fans wouldn't tune in for Ryan Garcia as a boxing analyst? Right? You don't think there aren't enough parts of the boxing game where a Jake Paul or someone like that who pulls a crowd couldn't say, hey, let's have Ryan Garcia in the booth. This guy, immensely popular on Twitter and Instagram, online presence. right? He would pull in fans. But it's not enough. He wants to be in the ring. Understand, he's not dealing with the kind of legacy that a Tyson Fury or a Dmitry Bivol is dealing with. But still, his reputation's on the line, isn't it? Right, still. Understand the income that he would make, the demand for him to be a boxing announcer, a boxing analyst, right, a celebrity, hinges on people's perception of his success in the ring. Why endanger that with extra fights? Let me close by saying this. Isn't there another side to the Terence Crawford-Canelo fight? What exactly is in it for Canelo? Right now, don't get me wrong, I'm interested in a fight based on styles. I now think Canelo wins the fight. But just understand, a lot of the pressure is going to be on Canelo because he's going to be a big favorite. Right? If there's a stretch of that fight where the smaller man, Terence Crawford, is beating up Canelo, and understand, Mikey Garcia the other day, and talking about how he felt Canelo would beat Crawford, mentioned in that interview that he thought Crawford was more skilled, a boxer, than Canelo. Right? What happens if Canelo's in the ring with Crawford and we see it? How does that help Canelo's career? How would a loss to Terence Crawford help Canelo's career? Right? Understand, too, in boxing, we have scrutiny. Right? Whenever a bigger man faces a smaller man, the pressure's on the bigger man, isn't it? Right? What exactly does Canelo hope to achieve now that's going to surpass or add to what he's done in the past? Right? Canelo has a lot of money. Right? Canelo's on the other side of 30. Boxing, hate to say it, but it's reality. Boxing's a dangerous sport to the point where there's some excellent fighters from the 80s and 90s that you rarely see because they now have slurred speech. Right? And so let me just close this video by saying legacy is a very strange thing. Right? As Jerry Seinfeld famously said, you stay on the stage too long, sooner or later the crowd turns on you. Right? Think about the ghosts haunting the heavyweight division. You have Gene Tunney. Right? He beats Jack Dempsey. Of course, he's the guy who was on the canvas during the long count. Think about that. He beats Jack Dempsey, retires. Unbeaten. Well, not unbeaten. We know Harry Greb beat him. Right? But he walks away from the sport. Rocky Marciano walks away from the sport as the heavyweight champion. Lennox Lewis walks away from the sport, having defeated everyone who he fought, right? Lost a couple of fights, avenged both. Then leaves the sport as the heavyweight champion. Right? Just think about that. There's no other fight that Lennox Lewis had after that Vitaly Klitschko fight where Lewis looks like Ali did against Larry Holmes. Right? Why are today's fighters so committed to continue fighting? Right? Tyson Fury, had he walked away, had he announced the same retirement he's announced now, had he not decided on the rematch with Usyk, his reputation would have an extra shine on it, wouldn't it? Right? Dmitry Bivol, I was shocked that he actually agreed to the Beterbiev rematch. Right? I think had he not agreed to the Beterbiev rematch, he would have already made the sale to those who believe in him. right? Understand, a lot can go wrong in a rematch. You remember the Nonito Donaire, Inoue first fight, went the distance. Inoue has never been challenged like that in any other fight. The rematch, Donaire wasn't so fortunate. We forget the brilliance of the first fight, don't we? When you have a blowout rematch. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. In the comment section of this video, I understand many people are going to say, look, these professional fighters need to keep going. Let me just say, Joe Frazier, believe it or not, blind in one eye, came back. Look up his record on BoxRec. Right? My point is simply, we forget Roy Jones at his best when he won the heavyweight title. Folks, that was spectacular hand speed and power. I encourage people to look at that fight film. It's Jones at his best. He walks away at that moment. As great as Roy Jones' reputation is today, it would be that much bigger, with a lot less wear and tear on his body. Understand, Jones recently did the Jake Paul fight. Jones is in demand as an announcer, right? He could have supported his family without the paydays from those subsequent fights. Those are my thoughts. I look forward to yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.